It's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on armoroftruth.net.
Greetings, everybody. It's Armor of Truth Live, number 240. Welcome to the show. Before we get started, we want to show you a clip to set things up tonight because I'm going to make a proclamation of ultimate truth tonight as to whether or not you should pay any attention to this and why it's so important that we don't. What's at stake? So check this out and we'll be back with you in about 2 minutes.
UFOs exist, and they are indeed of non-human origin. This report is the first evidence it might be true. Those are the explosive allegations from a former intelligence officer tonight in a whistleblower complaint that the Inspector General is taking very seriously.
For the very first time, the world is about to hear from a former high-level U.S. intelligence officer who says the government has some of the unidentified craft in its possession. In recent years, Congress starting an official U.S. government unidentified aerial phenomena task force. And now in a News Nation exclusive, David Grusch, an Air Force veteran, former member of that task force, is formally blowing the whistle on secrets he says no one has ever shared publicly before.
You are one of the most trusted former intelligence officials in the U.S. defense and intelligence establishment.
Yes, I was.
You were trusted with the most intimate secrets.
Yes.
What conclusion did you come to on the UAP task force?
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will. Non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
Do you have an alarm?
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No.
Is he having a laugh?
I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse.
You having a laugh?
People started confiding in me. They approached me, and they provided me documents and other proof.
Are you having a laugh?
Grusch alleges the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft for decades. He's filed a whistleblower complaint saying he gave what he calls the classified proof to Congress and the intelligence community inspector general. News Nation has confirmed David Grusch's credentials and resume. We've not seen or verified the alleged proof he says he's provided to investigators.
we've not seen or verified the alleged proof he says he's provided to investigators.
He says he can't show us the proof for national security reasons. He also tells us he's not seen photos of the alleged craft himself, but has talked extensively with other intelligence officials who have.
Are you having a laugh?
Lies. Can't show us the proof.
Conspiracy theories.
For national security reasons.
Junk science. Quackery.
He's not seen photos of the alleged craft himself.
Quackery.
We've not seen or verified the alleged proof.
And wholesale fiction.
But has talked extensively with other intelligence officials.
We control them.
Who have.
And we can remake them.
It gets creepier.
Some of them are cylinders, like cigars.
Yeah, I think we're going to hold off on D'Souza because we've shown him here several times because to stick with the primary story here tonight. Summer, what in the world do you think about that?
This is just a bunch of insanity.
A bunch of hooey?
A lot of distraction. And, we've been hearing about it for ages now, that it's the old alien deception thing. They got to build the momentum.
But maybe they're there, Summer. Maybe they're there.
In the headlines. Just put it in the headlines.
Who are you to say? Right. Who are you to say?
I'm only somebody who used to go to UFO meetings in high school, so I don't know anything about this whole thing at all whatsoever.
Me too, right? But you hear that. You hear people say, I heard Senator Bob Nelson, who was recently at the Ignatius Forum, speaking about what's going on in space and said, this is a learned man. He says, who am I to say that? Well, what do you mean, who are you to say? The truth can be known. These things are not unknowable. It's not as though the universe is this vast mystery. We just can't know anything about it.
Yeah, there's always these talking points of just suggestion, just talking points.
Well, they claim to be able to tell us about black holes. They claim to be able to tell us everything that's happening on a rock 7 million light years from somewhere. Right? They claim all of that, but then they'll say, who am I to say that there's not? Well, look, truth can be known, folks. Everything about this current narrative is intended to separate you from truth. And by truth, I mean the truth of who you are, the truth of your origins, right? A false origin story or a corrupted origin story is one of the worst things that can happen to you. And that's what this is ultimately about. This is confirming the theory of evolution. What else, Summer? It confirms the agenda too.
Well, Agenda 21. This is all about sustainable development goals.
Did you know that? Did you realize that Grusch and all these people who are all they're doing is carrying water for the United Nations. They're carrying water for Agenda 21, 2030, Green New Deal, the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty. All of this is served by this nonsense. So you might tell I'm a little bit fired up about this because this is bad. What is really happening here, actually? What could be the purpose of a narrative that has existed since the advent of broadcast media? Since it began, since we started blasting radio signals, this story has been alive since then. It is most certainly about confusion. The reasons for confusing the public certainly vary over the decades, and there are certainly occasions where true believers are out there reporting stories that they really believe are true. They don't have a worldview that informs them ultimately. They can't reason all the way to truth, so they believe certain things that are silly, quite frankly. But I'm here to inform you that truth can be known. There is no excuse in this day and age for anyone who presents themselves as a reporter, a journalist, a podcaster, YouTuber, or an internet blogger, truther, any of them. No excuse to be feeding you and the rest of America rank silliness and pointless confusion. The first widely publicized UFO report in America where the term flying saucer was used is known as the Kenneth Arnold sighting. Now, this is where it all began as far as the UFO narrative in America goes. There were other reported incidents and things like that. Of course, there's ancient aliens, right? Some, you got anything to say about ancient aliens right quick? Just one quick comment on ancient aliens. You could probably get it to one word.
False, not true.
Exactly. Chris White over at Verse by Verse, a YouTube channel called Verse by Verse Ministry. It is. Anyway, he's got a 3.5 hour documentary that debunks ancient aliens to death. There's no reason to trust any of it. And if that is the same people. It's really just the same group of people that are pushing this. And we'll tell you why and where all this comes from as we move along tonight. Kenneth Arnold was a businessman and a pilot. And on June 24th, 1947, near Mount Rainier in Washington State, Arnold was flying his private plane when he spotted a formation of 9 high-speed objects in the sky. He described their motion as saucer-like, flat, disc-shaped, which led to the popularization of the term flying saucer. Arnold estimated that the objects, now listen closely, he estimated that the objects, he's flying a plane, by the way, he estimated they were moving at incredible speeds, covering a distance of about 50 miles in a minute. That's 3,000 miles an hour. He reported his sighting to the authorities, and the story quickly gained widespread media attention, sparking a wave of UFO sightings and public fascination with the phenomenon. So you see how this works. Someone reports it, seeds the imagination, and then suddenly we have widespread attention. We have a wave of sightings. Public fascination. Now, by the way, let's just step aside for a second. 50 miles in a minute, 3,000 miles an hour. I would submit to you that if anything within sight, let's just say he was probably within a mile of these things he was reporting. Anything within a mile of your position that's moving anywhere near 3,000 miles an hour, you're probably not going to see it at all. You either couldn't see it well enough to discern anything about it, much less its shape and what material it's made out of, because later on, in the report, he said that, seemed to be metallic and all this. But likewise, there's no reason to assume that anything present in our atmosphere should be of an off-world origin. That has been seeded into the mindset. That assumption that something you can't explain in the sky is alien. Hollywood, right? The sorcerers of all things occult and salacious, combined with the imaginations of confident post-war Americans at the time, and the budding space race between America and the Soviet Union, both sides having divided up equal shares of the German scientists responsible for the advances in technology and rocketry of the Third Reich, Werner von Braun, for example, and this is very important, the boundaryless, immoral advances in psychology and individual and mass mind control from the brilliant but depraved minds of Goebbels and Joseph Mengele. Right. This is when all of this started. This is when this whole narrative began. After World War II, in Operation Paperclip, we've got all of these propagandists. It's important to note that while the Kenneth Arnold sighting popularized the term flying saucer, of course, there were many other reports going around at the time. The 1947 Roswell incident, that's been long, I don't want to use the term debunked because, it's the most likely scenario is that that was a Soviet drone with some of those experiments inside, 3 alien bodies. And there are documents out there that suggest. You can read Annie Jacobson's book on Operation Paperclip. Annie Jacobson's book on, I think it's the one on Area 51 that talks about this. That was most likely a drone from a high altitude plane from the Soviet Union who dropped a drone. At that time, it would not have any power. It's just something that looked like a saucer, and the story is that it had 3 young people, they could have been children or teenagers, who had been severely surgically altered. Ears removed, noses removed, and that vehicle was launched out of one of these high altitude planes, made its way to the desert floor, of course, and broke up, killing those inside. And people saw it. People saw the craft. They saw the beings. What is the most likely scenario? Let's apply Occam's razor here to this. That these were beings from another planet and another solar system who traveled all this way only to crash in the desert. Just think, thought experiment, think through this. Any beings who could travel that distance through the vacuum of space and get here and then also interact in our environment, you see, going from the vacuum of space coming into Earth's atmosphere is quite a change. Entering the atmosphere is problematic too. But the point is this: if they could come that far, surely they could figure out landing, right? Because they would have to be at least thousands of years advanced from us, right, to be able to travel that far. So the story makes no sense. The most likely answer, the most likely scenario is the Soviet scenario of altered young people, severely surgically altered, just dropped out of a plane. Why would they do that? Well, of course, the Soviet Union was very interested in how fast would a story like that spread within the United States of America. How fast could they, if they did this, then they could monitor and see how quickly it grew. Because one thing that the Soviet Union was doing right from the start, and they perfected right up through the years of the Cold War, is something called active measures, where they go into a nation or a society and they don't fire any bullets. They use Sun Tzu's Art of War, which says the greatest victory is that which requires no battle. Because this victory is won by total deception, to the point where your enemy destroys himself with false notions, confusion. Yuri Bezmenov talked about this for years. He defected from the Soviet Union and gave lectures on this. We've covered this here before, right? The 4 stages to conquer a nation: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. How do you demoralize a people? Separate them from their origin story. Separate them from God. One way you can start doing that is have something crash in the desert that looks like it might be UFO. You've got Hollywood seeding everybody with the idea of what aliens would. We have no idea what an alien would look like. Hollywood gave us that. No reason to think that any being from space would have 2 legs and 2 eyes. No reason to think that. This is all planted. All right. So just that as a little aside. The point is this: the UFO narrative is a lie of the most insidious kind. The facts are being withheld on purpose, and that is how you know they're manipulating you. So journalism's dead. Right? I know that's a shocker. But before we say anything else about this codswallop of a story, let the reader understand this gibberish UFO story is actually a blessing. Why would I utter such seeming drivel? Well, because this story, for all the credentials and vouching for the whistleblower and for all the major media coverage and alternative media coverage and for all the outright wasting of everyone's time, in one of those interesting kindnesses of God where the adversary's tactic backlashes on his scaly noggin, the story is doing us all a great service in exposing exactly who you can and cannot trust to do real research, to actually care about you, the viewer, and the consumer of their product. In the mainstream media, it's pretty obvious who you can't trust. It's a sweep. But now we're being shown exactly who from the alternative media, podcasters, YouTubers, Who will run with anything that gets some clicks, engagement, more ad revenue? Because, and I will say this, having all prerequisite intercession for discernment completed, anyone, I mean any pundit, talking head, podcast host, from News Nation to Clayton Morrison Redacted, anyone who is covering this story as if it is a real news story and presenting it to you as though it were an actual bombshell of disclosure about government secrecy and the cover-up of an alien crash retrieval program, anyone who was quoting David Grusch or any one of the other so-called disclosure whistleblowers is either not too bright, flat out lying, or worse, they don't care one bit about you and whether or not you receive good and meaningful information. Now, am I being harsh? Is that harsh? Do you think that's harsh?
No, it's relevant, necessary.
Well, here's the thing. It's not harsh to tell the truth, especially when so much is at stake. Right now, as we sit here tonight, we're in a multifront war for our freedom and for the dignity of all who bear the image of God. On one front, at this very minute, we're in a war for our freedom and the survival of our nation. On another front, we're in a war to protect our children from the most powerful, most debauched, perverted, hypersexualized movement the world has ever seen. So let me just go to this story for just a moment before we get back to the UFO stuff. Right here. Here's the story. I covered this the other night, but it's worth mentioning again because this is why we cannot waste our time with this nonsense. I think it might be good to just let this lady tell the story. I covered it the other night. Basically, the story is this. In California, there is a bill that it's been passed, AB 957, would charge any parent who doesn't affirm transgenderism with child abuse, right? And it's a sanctuary state. They can hide your child from you. So essentially, a boy could wake up at getting mad at his mother at 8 a.m. And by 10 a.m., he could have the process to have his mother arrested for not affirming his delusion. Let's listen to this.
I am Erin Friday, lead of Our Duty, an attorney and a mother of a girl who used to believe that she was a boy. AB 957 is the first bill in the nation to codify into law that a parent who does not affirm the gender identity of the child is abusive. There is no nuance in this bill. It matters not the age of the child, the absurdity of the identity, adopted, comorbid mental health issues, or persistence. Family court judges will be compelled to favor the child who will affirm the child's delusion. Parents can easily game the system and use gender as retaliation against each other. What happens when one parent will socially affirm the child but will not agree to medicalize? Does the parent willing to do more transitioning prevail? AB 957 unambiguously states that the health, safety, and welfare of the child includes a parent's affirmation of the child's gender identity. If it passes, it will be child abuse if one does not affirm a child's gender identity, and not just in custody cases. The triad of words, health, safety, and welfare will be used by CPS, judges, and police to take children away from parents like me who knew better than to concretize their child's gender identity. The Penal Code defines neglect as harm to a child's health and welfare. It also defines harming a child as causing the child's health to be endangered. Child abuse or neglect is defined in the Penal Code as endangering the health of a child. In a case last year entitled Saul H., a minor was not returned to his parents because returning him to his family was not in the best interest of his health, safety, and welfare.
So what this means is that right now in our country, well, I don't know, California, is that still our country? Well, for the moment, I guess it is. But that's happening. That's real. That's going on. Do we have time? Do you think that we have time for David Grusch? Do you think that we have time for any of this? I mean, this is an important time in our history. We're in a war. This is why we don't have time for UFO conspiracies. Our children's lives and our nation's survival are at stake. If we remain in a slumber, mesmerized by so many silly yarns such as this ridiculous spin from David Grusch, Luis Elizondo, name them, whoever. There's a ton of them right now. We'll show you a few of them later. Or the ridiculous story that, the David Grusch story that was broken by the Debrief and then taken and run with by News Nation, The Hill, Redacted, and many more. There are cold, calculating, intelligent, patient billionaires who intend to destroy America and our children with it. We don't have time to trifle with fakes, frauds, and grifters who sully the history and hard-fought battles of true whistleblowers who sacrifice their reputations, their safety, and in some cases, even their lives to actually expose government corruption for the good of all Americans. So, let's just make this clear. We must pay attention out there to who is covering this story as a real news story, calling it a bombshell. And then mark and avoid every media outlet who, by their participation in this balderdash, is saying to you that it's worth your time to be invested in this story, as if this is what it means to be well informed, as if this is information you need that is wasting your time. As you try to survive the overthrow of our churches, our schools, our legal system, our government, and the destruction of the family in America, as you try to figure out how to plot your way through this matrix, right? How much do you have to hate your audience to serve them this level of poppycock? Well, they're doing it. And some of the ones that you might like, you might have found them to be very informative. I'll just tell you right here, we've watched Redacted quite a bit. What do you think about Redacted, Summer?
Well, I think that they're definitely shills.
Well, I mean, now I'll provide this perspective. There are some stories that they're very well informed on, but just recently they were covering the pandemic treaty, right? And what happened there?
Yeah, the pandemic treaty. She just wasn't very informed on it at all, and
can't get it wrong.
Yeah, gave people bad advice, and so I don't care for what they do. I don't think that they're doing people any service, actually, because especially when you blend a story like this UFO story in with all these other stories that might have some credibility and might have some truth, they're just doing the classic thing where you give a lot of the truth so that people will trust you, and then you insert these stories that are just simply not true at all, and that's very harmful and irresponsible.
Right. So they don't have to be necessarily intending to deceive you, but maybe they just think it's not that big a deal, or what. I don't know what they think, but this guy right here, John D'Souza, FBI retired. I don't know what his credentials actually are, but
goofball.
Well, Clayton has no problem bringing this guy on his show. This guy is an obvious fake. He is a fraud from the word go. If you want to check out something that's pretty interesting, I would say, as far as I can tell, and I'm sitting here making all these claims about being able to discern truth from error, and do it for yourself. Check out what the New York Post has done with this story. You can go to the New York Post YouTube channel. You can check it out for yourself. Stephen Greenstreet started out covering this as a believer. And as he got into it deeper, found out this is nothing but, it's hogwash, all of it. So check that out. But look at this. Let's just, for a second here, just look through. Alien bodies, video evidence of U.S.-held UFO handed over to journalists. What's the problem with that report? It's not true. There's just nothing about that that's true. And as I told you, we don't have time for this. Does Redacted care about their viewers?
Apparently not.
Do they care at all about your valuable time. Right? This is vapidness. It's hearsay. It's nonsense. Just check out
Well, over the past few days, a bombshell revelation from a Pentagon insider, a whistleblower, who's come forward to admit that the United States has alien craft, off-world vehicles that we've been reverse engineering for many, many years. They've been suppressing it from the public. And this whistleblower came forward with a complaint about this suppression. Listen to David Grusch with this complaint.
When you say crash retrieval, what?
Okay, so we've already heard from him, but let's look and see who is it that who did Clayton bring on? There was another one here where he was actually talking to Stephen Greer. All right, so here we go. This is the Hill. I'm going to get back to Redacted here for a second. Yeah, there they go. Let's check out this report.
Well, more UFO whistleblowers are coming forward to
just running with it, right? This is, I don't know, they've been doing this for the past year. Just running with it. This is the second phase of UFO disclosure. Special guest, Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, it just makes the audience look gullible, honestly, Well,
you have to ask, who is Dr. Michael Salla? I'll tell you in just a second.
Confirm what David Grusch, another UFO whistleblower from the...
Right now, here's what he's saying. We've got someone who's going to come on and confirm the story that David Grusch told, because that's all he did was tell a story. Did you catch the opening? David Grusch hasn't even seen the evidence. He hasn't even seen the documents. What he says he did was he went to Congress and said, hey, somebody told me that this is going on. I'm reporting it to you. That's the bombshell. Come on.
The Pentagon told us about a week and a half ago in his explosive interview in the debrief, which is that the United States government has downed craft, has alien architected crafts which have been reverse engineered for decades by the U.S. military and other world governments. This is perhaps the biggest story of all time. Why are we not hearing more about this? Well,
because it's a lie. Because it's not real. Look at him delivering
it too. Just the seriousness and
it's rough because this is a channel that's highly respected.
Millions of views or millions of followers.
2 million, right at 2 million. This video here, Dr. Michael Salla here, this video has been viewed 237,000 times in 3 days. I'll tell you who Michael Salla is in just a moment.
Now new whistleblowers are coming forward to confirm what David Grusch has said. For that, we wanted to get the expertise of perhaps one of the world's most renowned researchers in this field on exopolitics.
I can't.
Exopolitics.
I can't. Did you... Expert, world-renowned. Let's just go to Dr. Michael Salla's website.
Bloviating.
I mean, you might think I'm overplaying this a little bit, but I didn't have this link ready, but I'll get it ready right quick. It's not hard to find his website. Dr. Michael Salla. Exopolitics Today. What are exopolitics? Well, that's the study of politics in space. Like, how are we going to manage our relations with the Galactic Federation of Light?
Oh, that's the story that they've been banging the drum on for decades. We need to improve world relations for when the aliens come.
There you go. Well, here's the website for Dr. Michael Salla. It is a hodgepodge of more silliness stuff. There's no evidence for anything. It's nothing but pure speculation, all of it. And Clayton looks at him and looks at us and says, this is an expert renowned for his research and work in exopolitics. Folks, this is what I'm talking about. We're in a war right now. I encourage you to go check this website out. You'll see very quickly. Let's see here. Investigating alien interrogation and alien autopsy videos. There are no aliens. They don't exist. Let's assume you don't hold my worldview. My worldview can there's room for aliens in my worldview, but they're not there. How can you be so sure? See how that happens? We've got to a point today where people question, how can you be so sure? We don't know everything. No.
Well, for one, look at who's talking about proof of them.
Right.
That's one way to know that they're not here and that they're not real.
Consider the source. That's what we're going to do tonight, is consider the source, and they all do the same thing. But truth can be known. It can be known. And all this story does, this is a bit of an angle that we're working on here. It's something called disordered ambition. That's really just lust. But disordered ambition is the way we're talking about it. It's a wrong view of origins. And it detaches the image bearer of God from their true identity. And it detaches a person from the source of eternal truth.
Right. So people are even more disoriented. I don't know if I'm a male. I don't know if I'm a female. I don't know if I'm a wolf. And,
Exactly.
I think that I'm...
Transgenderism, how did we get there? This is how.
Yeah.
Thinking like this. And what that does when people... We take it all the way back to 47. And Stalin drops this drone into the southwestern desert. A false origin makes a person vulnerable to what James calls dipsukos in the Greek. That is double-souled. That means you hold two positions in your mind that are contrary to one another, and you try to live both of them out at the same time. And when you are double-minded, that means you're unstable
in all your ways.
In all your
ways.
That means you can't be trusted in really any part of your life because you're extremely gullible and vulnerable. True origins are so important because that is where redemption begins. That is where the origin of truth lies. That's how we protect ourselves from nonsense. Right from Genesis 3, that is where the adversary sought to separate mankind from his origins. And now, because of this, we have something like postmodernism, which is a celebration of ugliness. It's just completely opposed to God. It's a castration of society. I think that was Summer's term there. That's a good one. But it also says that everything ancient is ignorant and oppressive. Therefore, with such a disordered idea of our own origins, we're doomed to repeat the worst parts of our history.
Well, also think about, remember when they did War of the Worlds?
Yes. Oh, that's right. We didn't add that in the show tonight, but War of the Worlds is an excellent example.
So now think about all the technology that they have and the technology that we've never seen.
Oh, yeah.
Plus all of the communications,
I do have that note here. These are called, at the opening video that I pointed out how it was priming the viewer as you talk about. We'll talk about his qualifications in just a moment, but these are priming deceptions, as Summer just mentioned. War of the Worlds. I think it was 1938, somewhere around there, when this radio broadcast went out of just a story. But the people were hearing it. They didn't hear the beginning where it said, we're going to now listen to a story. And
people thought it was real.
They thought it was real. And it sounded real. And in fact, there have been a couple, maybe quite a few researchers over the years who have delved into this kind of thing where it looks like it was done on purpose as a way to see how people might respond, right? They didn't run any commercials during the show, right? So it seemed like a live report because the way the story goes, it's news reporters reporting about aliens invading the city.
Right, and that would be so easy to do today, to just create some sort of sky show. Remember how they did all those drones and how New Year's was this past year?
Oh, yeah.
Where they were, just creating all this art in the sky.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, they have capabilities now that and very soon with artificial intelligence, the capabilities to deceive the public is just going to be growing exponentially. That's why you have to be grounded in the truth. That means that starts with your identity. Who do you belong to? Ronald Reagan said during his second term in office, he gave that speech about certainly if there was an alien threat, all of us would come together, right? Well, slowly over generations, you look at that, look at the War of the World, Roswell, the UFOs, the movies, War of the Worlds, Reagan's comment about coming together. Slowly over generations, we have been groomed and separated from our origin.
And also Whitley Strieber's Communion.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, Whitley Strieber. There's lots of Kevin D. Randall. I remember he was the one who wrote the first book on Donald R. Schmidt and Kevin D. Randall. They're the ones who wrote the first book on the Roswell incident, and I read that thing up. I went and saw them. I went and saw them give the lecture about it in Charlotte one year back in the early '90s.
Yeah.
So not just talking about this topic like from afar, been in the middle of it.
Yeah, we were true believers at one point,
right.
Both of us.
True believers. And that's another concept, right? There are, whether you're talking about the WHO or you're talking about the UN or you're talking about this silliness here, there's really two groups of people involved here. There are the in the know, we'll call them authoritarians.
The deceivers.
Yeah, those who are in the know. And then there are the in the dark true believers. And that's your UFO community. In the dark true believers. It's not as if they don't have access to the truth, but just as you see on the poster, they want to believe.
Yeah, I want to believe.
And that's because...
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because they've been separated from their origin, from their true origin story. Let's talk just a minute about, well, let me see. I got to go back here over to Redacted for a second. Let's look at who he has on the show.
And alien interactions with human beings. That is Dr. Michael Sala.
No evidence for any such thing, but let's just present it as
Doctor, welcome to the show.
By the way, Dr. Michael Sala. Let me tell you one thing about Sala here. He is the man who believes, still talks about that at various points in the United States, there are jump rooms where you can go into a room or a booth or something and jump to Mars. Clayton thinks this is news.
Well, there's one at Universal Studios, which is really cool, but
a jump room.
Well, you can get in, and it's like you're going to Mars.
Yeah.
Flying in, flying out.
But then you get out, and you go back, and you go over and get a funnel cake, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because so it's
right.
But these people, really disappointed here in Clayton. He's got such a large audience, and is capable of doing an excellent job with news stories and actually covering stories and breaking them down.
See, but I'm more cynical because I think that's just that, this is the kind of news agency that does these kind of things. Like they'll put out some good information, but it's also going to be seeded with all of this tabloid news.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Possible.
Thanks, Clayton, for having me.
Real pleasure. Real treat to have you here. And, I have to say, we're going to cover a lot of ground today, and who've come forward to reveal similar things. What did you think this week when you saw this?
Well, I thought it was very significant that, firstly, that story.
Dr. Sala is Australian, by the way. So he's an Aussie. He's an Aussie? Yeah, he's an Aussie.
That was published in the debrief was first passed by the New York Times, Politico, and The Hill.
See, he's telling you right there. There's a reason. Now, this is the story, right? The New York Times passed it up. So did Politico. So did the Washington Post. So did all these other. And the reason they passed it up is because they don't want you to know the truth. That's the way this goes. It couldn't be because, well, there's no evidence here. There's actually no story here. But listen.
And that the authors had to run it through the debrief, even though they had previously published in the New York Times similar stories with their kind of rigorous background.
Again, now let me say, with their rigorous background, they ran a story at the New York Times. That story that they're talking about here is a story by Leslie Keene. She's one of the journalists who broke the story on the debrief. She is well known for this New York Times story, which was roundly and thoroughly debunked very quickly. And right here on this this video from let me show you in her own words what she was actually doing. I'll have to slide forward here to find her. I'm telling you, Stephen Greenstreet's done a pretty good job of covering this topic. I'll just go to the timestamps. You can hear her in her own words telling you why. Here it is, the New York Times article.
And she replied that her specific goal with that article was to give UFOs credibility. So she avoided reporting on some things.
I chose not to focus on it because the angle that I was taking in my reporting was to try to get credibility for the subject, and I knew that that was not the way to go.
That's called manipulation, right? When you leave out facts, when you leave out parts of the story that obviously make it not true, that's called manipulating the public.
Well, she also looks like she's sitting in a haunted house.
That's a pretty interesting set.
Elvira is going to come out.
Was not
You expect to hear Vincent Price in the back.
the first step in terms of getting people to accept this.
So an author of the original...
You hear that? Getting people to accept. I'll let Stephen finish. Getting people to accept it.
New York Times article, the article that was the first domino to fall in all of this, says she wrote the article with a specific angle in mind. Get people to accept UFOs as real. That sounds like the goal of an activist, not a journalist. But I see where she's coming from, because could you imagine if that first New York Times article had talked about werewolves and poltergeists and giant dino beavers? It would have been laughed at and ridiculed and used as a prime example of the government wasting taxpayer money. But because all of that wasn't mentioned, and only unidentified flying objects were, that New York Times article continues to validate UFOs with not just your average citizen, but also with members of Congress.
And so this is, and here's George Knapp. George Knapp has played an important role in shoveling this manure on the people for decades now. He's the one that broke the Bob Lazar story. And so this is what Clayton's doing. He's running with stories that are
Well, Glenn Beck even had something out. We didn't get a chance to check that out yet, but he had a video out about it too.
Also calling it a bombshell, right? This is bad. This is one of those moments where people are exposing themselves. I just noticed this too. Look over, if you could see over Dr. Sala's shoulder here. You see that Space Force, but over here, over on the left side of the screen, over his right shoulder, U.S. Army Insider Missions. You know what that is? I know what this book is. This is about super soldiers. This is about super soldiers who are genetically, they're this gets a little deep, who are created. Well, they're an abduction event happens to a woman, and she has a child. And when she has this child, the government shows up and takes this child. In the case of, oh boy, this is going to get, yeah. Let's see.
Break it down, Brad.
Is it Kramer? This is one of those super soldiers. I don't know if that's not him. It's, oh boy, I'm going to lose it because I can't remember his first name now. But anyway, he was a guy. He was a guy who, a few years ago when YouTube was kind of more of a free for all. It's kind of like the Wild West. You can get anything on there, and he's still out there. It's It's Randy. I can't remember his name now, but it was this. If you've ever watched Bases, right? The Bases YouTube channel. Bases, what is it? Bases UK.
I just mostly was looking at bases for the Max Spears stuff.
Yeah. And they have a lot of super soldier stories here too. And Randy Kramer, I got to remember this guy's name so you can hear a story of one of these super soldiers, right? Randy Kramer's story, I can't if that's his name. His story was this. He would be taken out of his bed at night, somehow or another. dematerialized. You don't need any real science or evidence.
Transported to the ship.
Transported to a base, and then from that base they would go to some location where they would board a ship. Now, he added an extra layer. They would board some kind of ship that would take them to the moon, right? Because on the moon is where the real jump off point to Mars is. So they go to the moon, and this is where these super soldiers are all meeting. And then from the moon, they jump to Mars. And they had colonies on Mars. He told about all the animals and things, the dangerous stuff that was there. The reason I'm bringing this story up, not to make this look silly, it's because that's what Dr. Michael Salla writes about. That's what he tries to promote. Clayton Morris thinks that's valuable information for your time. I wish I'd thought about that beforehand. I could have put some clips together of these guys. Maybe we'll do it later and show you that's what Mr. Grusch here
has to ratchet up the fear. So now what they're doing is they're having these things actually.
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles. Call it space. Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No.
Is he having a laugh?
I thought it was totally nuts.
He's not a very reliable source. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, I've gotten off on a tangent here, but let's just cover him for a moment, and we'll get back to this stuff in a minute. David Charles Grusch, this guy, was born in 1987. He did serve, well, as far as we know. He's got credentials. He served in the U.S. Air Force before working in positions involving unidentified aerial phenomena. I think they actually call them now unidentified anomalous phenomena, but who cares? It's just unidentified nonsense.
They want you to take it seriously now. That's why they've repositioned it.
Right. Change the name because the UFOs, that's wacko. UAPs are serious. Right. Well, this is essentially the new name, but he worked on one of these, had one of these positions identifying these things from 2016 to 2021. He was a senior intelligence officer at the National Reconnaissance Office. He was the representative to the UAP task force from late 2021 until 2022. What's interesting about these groups and these task forces, if you'll read the article that New York Post has about this, and check out the videos they've got available too on their YouTube channel. These task forces, and all, there's a lot of obfuscation. There's just a lot of some of these things didn't exist. Right? No one could ever really pin down who this guy Lou Elizondo, where he actually worked. None of the stuff he claimed that he was like the director of could be verified. And Elizondo is the guy who was brought forth in 2017 after Leslie Keene, she's the author on this debrief article, right? This nonsense, nothing burger. She was the one who, what you just showed you, manipulated the public by leaving out relevant facts so that people would accept it. Same group of people. Anyway, so Grusch worked on the UAP task force from late 2021 until July 2022. Or that period of time, he was the co-lead for the UAP analysis at the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. Whatever. During his time as an intelligence officer, David claimed that he came upon a massive government conspiracy regarding UAPs. We're going to call them UFOs. How about that? Before releasing any information to the media, David supplied the Defense Office of Pre-Publication, and Security Review, the information he intended to release. And they cleared his statements for open publication. Put a pin in that for a moment. We'll come right back to that. That's a very important point we cannot gloss over. Come back to it. Grusch left his job with the government on April 7th of this year, 2023, in order to advance government accountability through public awareness. I'll just jump in right here to say the reason I want to just assume the best as I can of him, but I can tell you that a lot of these people that say they've come out of the government, maybe they've retired, maybe they've seen another opportunity. The Alien Con, the UFO, the summer tour of conferences and where speakers show up. This is a huge topic now. If you can get a book deal and you can get on this speaking circuit, right now you can make a lot of money. I think that's really why you see so many whistleblowers coming forth. On June 5th of 2023, an article about his claims was published on a website called The Debrief. It's virtually an unknown website. I'm sure most of you have never heard of it. They say that they're a self-funded organization, but what they explore frontier science. They explore things like Dr. Michael Salla writes about, innovative technology. But as a summary of the article, with paraphrases, David Grusch claimed that for decades the United States has been running a deeply covert operation to retrieve downed UFOs. That the government has possession of intact and partially intact spacecraft from non-human origin. In addition to the U.S. government, allies, and defense contractors have also recovered vehicles. And they're basically the story is they're running a secret program, and the people running it have analyzed these vehicles and have concluded that they possess unique atomic arrangements. This is from the article. And radiological signatures, that they must be of exotic origin. David claimed that the secret program did not share information about their activity to Congress in violation of the law. Grusch supplied information about this secret operation to Congress and to the Department of Defense Inspector General. As a result, David was targeted and harassed by members of the secret recovery operation, or so he said. And he filed a complaint saying that he was the victim of illegal retaliation because he made confidential disclosures. The article also contained information that appeared to boost David's credibility, right? You read through the article and you hear he's just exemplary character, perfect record, all this. For example, I guess the retired Army colonel, he's in right here, this guy. He said, what's his name? Let's see. This is Carl E. Neal, vouched for David Grusch. He said he was beyond reproach. And a performance report on Grusch in 2021 indicated that David Grusch was an adept staff officer and strategist. And a 2022 performance evaluation claimed that David was an officer with the strongest possible moral compass. This is what you find in the debrief article, right? So, once again, they want to make sure that you trust everything they're saying because they already know they're not going to give you any evidence. This is called priming. It's called appeal to authority. When you don't have evidence and you start appealing to all of these credentials, there's a fallacy at work. David participated in a follow-up interview after the debrief article with News Nation. That's the clip we showed you. We showed you clips from that, where he implied that the military had discovered dead alien pilots in the spacecraft. He didn't say that in the debrief article, but he did say it in the News Nation interview. He said, quote, "Believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true." The U.S. House of Representatives plans to investigate David's allegations, but the Department of Defense didn't seem as enthusiastic. A spokesperson for the DOD released a statement regarding his complaints and the something called the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. What is that? ADARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. We're wasting a lot of money in our government. Released something that said this, quote, "To date, AARO has not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate the claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of any extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. AARO is committed to following the data and its investigation wherever it leads, unquote. So what's wrong here? What is it? What am I ranting on and on about, right? This is harmless, right? It's not a big deal. Well, I told you we'd put a pin in this. We'd come back to it for a minute. This is a really important point. Before Grusch could come out and say anything to you that had to do with his former job, it is a fact that he had to clear every bit of what he was going to say with the Department of Defense beforehand. So it says right here in the article, in accordance with protocols, Grusch provided the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review at the DoD with the information he intended to disclose to us. His on-the-record statements were all cleared for open publication on April 4th and 6, 2023, in documents provided to the debrief. So they signed off on what he had to say. What does that mean? It means that everything he's saying in these interviews, the government doesn't consider it a secret, doesn't consider it top secret, doesn't consider it to be anything that they particularly mind anyone saying. Mr. Grusch is now a private citizen. He has the right to say whatever he wants to say, of course. The DoD is not going to tell him what he can talk about as a private citizen. They're only going to dictate what is top secret and can't be revealed. What does that tell us? It tells us that he did not reveal any secrets. What that means is if such a program existed, it would obviously be top secret. And if it existed and was top secret, David Grusch could not talk about it. He couldn't say these things. So by saying this, what he actually affirmed was that no such retrieval program can exist. Because if it did exist, it would be top secret and he would go to prison. All right. So this is why Clayton Morris needs to tidy up his research methods just a bit, or at least care about the audience a little more than this. As we were saying, as Summer brought up just a moment ago, the UFO story really supports the theory of evolutionary naturalism or Darwinian evolution. It supports the philosophical naturalism. In other words, well, this means there's nothing exists but matter and energy and time, right? And so I can say to you with certainty that there are no aliens, no other material beings, no sentient moral agents than exist here on Earth. No other moral agents exist in the universe. Not in the way these whistleblowers describe. Anyway, now when we get to non-physical, we get to spiritual beings, that's a different story. But that's not what they're saying. Right? There's plenty of people will, respond and say that the aliens are, what are they saying about the aliens? That they're demons? Yeah. Right.
And fallen angels.
And that could be the case, but the government doesn't have any dead fallen angels, right? They don't have any vehicles of fallen angels. None of that. That's why, let's just keep it focused right now. Let's don't go into the demonic yet. There's a place for that, but not right here.
Well, for sure, it's an antichrist deception
Sure.
overall, but
No doubt.
there's no bodies and there's no spaceships.
It is an antichrist deception in many ways. What we're focused on tonight is the fact that this is an antichrist deception in the sense that it separates you from your origin story. Now, there's no doubt about it. I think that a lot of what people have experienced that they call alien, whether they've seen something or experienced, they've had an abduction experience, I don't discount those. I don't say those people aren't really having experiences. I think that's probably a demonic experience.
Yeah, a lot of the people that were quote unquote alien abduction survivors, they said that when they called out to Jesus, it would stop. So there's your,
Interesting.
Yeah.
What we're really talking about here, though, in this report is something known as the extraterrestrial hypothesis, right? It suggests that aliens are moral agents, that they're physical beings, and that they travel around, space, the universe, the solar system, or other places. Now, my attitude about this, it's not arrogance. This is truth founded on eternal principles. It's the concept of first and last things, right? Where did all this begin? If you're not grounded in how this creation got here in the first place, if you're confused about it, or you think that this universe is eternal, we've talked about that before, that's impossible, right? We'll get into those apologetics right now, but the universe cannot be eternal. It's logically impossible. So there are first things, and there are last things. In other words, that means we have an origin, and that gives us our dignity. We know why we're here, and we know where we're going, and we know why all these things happen. Reason, logic, and evidence properly applied according to priority, Scripture first, and then reason, logic, and evidence used to understand it. Eternal truth first, and critical thinking next. Why do I say that? Now, recently, yesterday, we've been working on here doing a formal logic course, just writing one up, just basics, so that people can learn the process of how you take these stories and just step by step understand whether or not it makes any sense, and just formal logic, right? But for example, let me give you an example of just a syllogism of how you figure out whether something is true or false, or you make a claim. For example, now this is the same process that a lot of these people use. I'm going to show you what the problem is. Premise one: all mammals are animals. Premise two: all dogs are mammals. Conclusion: therefore, all dogs are animals. Okay, so that's a bulletproof syllogism. The premises are valid, and they lead to a conclusion. The process by which the conclusion was arrived at did not violate the laws of logic. So, all mammals are animals, all dogs are mammals, therefore all dogs are animals. So what's the problem? The problem is there's another step before all this begins. What is a mammal? What is an animal? What is a brain? What is thought? What is thinking? What is existence? So this is deductive reasoning. What's missing from all of this is the problem of induction. You can't know anything without that first cause, that mind. What is a mind? A mind is not a physical thing. So there's something that exists. There's a prerequisite for all knowledge. Before you can have deductive reasoning, there's something before that. And that is called first things. That's eternal truth. That's what the scriptures give us. That's what they present to us. They present and explain to us how we got here, why we're here, and where we're going. Okay. So if someone claims to be engaging in critical thinking, but had not submitted his finite mind to eternal principles, which can be known, that person is engaging in speculation. That's what all of these people are currently up to, speculation.
It's power of suggestion.
That also, no doubt about it. That's what Leslie Kean was engaging in. Now, we're not speculating. Nothing we're doing here is speculation, right? We're just telling you the truth founded on eternal principles. The common UFO narrative, artificial, physical, technical vehicles or craft of an off-planet, non-human origin, do not exist. The extraterrestrial hypothesis is false. There has never been any evidence that could pass any deductive logic to say that it's true. These notions and these lines of inquiry are a waste of time and will lead you nowhere but to your own deeper enslavement to your earthly masters. The UFO narrative serves the purpose of confusing people to believe in a false origin story for humanity. There are several different false origins available within such a narrative, within the UFO narrative, right? It could be that aliens came here and seeded the planet with humanity, right? It could be that they came here themselves and their planet was dying. You hear all kinds of stories.
Yeah.
None of it is...
I'm sorry. It just came to my mind about what Yuval Harari is babbling on about that's been in the press this week about him wanting to rewrite the Bible with AI. They want AI to write the Bible, rewrite it.
Excellent point. So how would you combat such a ridiculous notion? How would you if Yuval Harari was standing in front of you, how would you handle such arrogance? The problem of induction. Yuval Harari can't come up with that concept except for the fact that there is an eternal principle. There was something before his ability to reason to such a conclusion. Yuval Harari cannot describe for you what a mind is. He's an atheist to begin with. And therefore his worldview is severely flawed and insufficient for the reality in which we live. However, that is the man that a lot of people are listening to. And I'm telling you, you may as well say that he is mentally ill. I don't mean that literally. I just mean that his worldview is so limited and flawed that it makes him dangerous. Right? Because if survival of the fittest is true, then why shouldn't Yuval Noah Harari be the man in charge? And why shouldn't he say who lives and dies? Why shouldn't he say which religions are true? When we argue with these people based on what we feel should be true or what serves the flourishing of humanity best, we lose. You have to start from the image of God. You have to start with first things and from there only. All of these false origins that are presented lead to confusion. Everything Harari is saying leads to confusion, and it all separates you from your original origin, from your true origin. You are an image bearer of God. That is your true identity. Affirming a false origin or even assuming that it doesn't matter is the same thing as having a false story. All right, well, I don't have a lot more to cover on this. I think I've gotten to just about everything. I wanted to make sure I pointed out for you guys to check out this article at the New York Post. It came out on March 21st of this year. Crazy UFO believing Pentagon bosses missed the spycraft for years. Check this story out and check out this playlist of videos. Oh boy, I lost it. At the New York Post website, YouTube channel. The Basement Office, Season 3. That's where I get it. Green Street covers the Skinwalker Ranch fiasco, too. And just, it's a good report. It's not a Christian worldview, but he does a good job of showing you why all this is silliness. I say specifically, Basement Office Season 3, this episode called The UFO Lie. I'll tell you just about everything you need to know. One of the things it shows you in here is how important this UFO conference tour is and why people are leaving their careers to get on it, because you can make a lot of money right now with some kind of new UFO claim. Right now, Just watch. Just watch how Grusch becomes the golden boy of the movement. By the way, I think Clayton, I wanted to see here if I was right. I think Clayton actually had on his show. Let's listen to Keen for just a moment here. Listen to it.
This week, whistleblower David Grusch told News Nation that non-human craft has been recovered and kept by the United States in a task force retrieval program.
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical.
Let me jump ahead here. We don't want to hear the same story over and over. Let's listen to Leslie Keene, what she has to say for herself here.
Also published a book in 2010 called UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Here to tell us more about her time reporting on UFOs and recent claims on the topic of extraterrestrial life is Leslie Keene. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. Great to be with you guys.
It's great to be here with you. What do you make of Grusch's claims that there are craft or potentially even pilots?
I can't comment at all on the pilot part of it because that was not part of our reporting, and I never spoke to him about that. So that's aside. But in terms of his I guess you'd call them claims, his allegations that there are actual retrieved craft.
You can hear her. She's backing away from this story a little bit because I don't think she was prepared for this backlash. She's back. There are two authors, two journalists on this story, and she's one of them. So she's not really standing behind her story too much here. I guess you could call them claims, right? They wrote the article as though it was truth.
Very, very seriously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have reported on it. And not only because of what he has told me, but because of what a number of other people have told me, quite a few, both on and off the record, but mainly off the record, that there are many others like him who are not whistleblowers, but have the same information. And in fact, others that may have more direct information than.
Now, she's talking about guys like Lou Elizondo, people like that. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time with this. I think you get it, right? What's going on here. Keep in mind now, what we said about Grusch earlier, he had to have everything he said cleared by the Department of Defense. Not everything he said. He can say whatever he wants to. But if he's going to say something about a top secret program, they need to know about it. Because he can't do that. Because if he comes out and reveals stuff that's top secret, he goes to prison. So you can rest assured that anything he said, not top secret, not even in existence. So, but also, if the DOD had to clear what he could and couldn't say, I'm not saying they're being honest either. Just think about this for me. Can you think of anything that happened? Tell me. What happened? Is there anything that the Department of Defense has done over the last, 3 years?
Injectables.
That's been a little shady?
Mm-hmm. Injectables.
Countermeasures, maybe?
Countermeasures.
Right.
Yes.
Should we take anything coming out of their general vicinity?
They're facing their first lawsuit for that.
Right,
for a death that occurred because of the injectables. There's a case now against the Department of Defense.
It's an interesting case because for the first time in this whole debacle with the pandemic and all, with lawsuits, for the very first time, the correct defendants are being identified. And one of them was the Department of Defense, because they're the ones who ordered the countermeasures or the jabs. They ordered them. They specifically ordered them from the pharmaceutical companies, and they specifically left off the safety, all the safety protocols. They didn't order safety protocols. They ordered countermeasures, also known as weapons. That's what the Department of Defense does. They acquire weapons. They work in defense. They shut down enemies. In this case, I think it was the American people. Recently, there's been an increased level of interest in these topics, of course, related to UFOs, UAPs, whatever. You've seen a lot of military pilots come out and talk about this, right? So it's military pilots. That gives it a lot of credibility, right? Look at those videos, right? Look at the videos from the F-18 Super Hornets right? Those pilots clearly saw something, right? Of course, they saw something. Again, it came out of the Department of Defense. I don't know. Let's just assume the videos are real. There's nothing manipulated at all.
Well, by the way, meanwhile, there's the Gay Pride Festival on the White House, and Joe Biden with the boobs incident. Excuse my French, but so there's that going on.
That's not French. That's Norwegian.
But yeah, this is just insane. It's so demoralizing. All of it, all happening at once. Big tidal wave. Just when you think things aren't going to get weirder, they get crazier. And so, yeah, you've got this, aliens are real again. And then you've got the White House with the trans flag and Biden in pictures with people with, indecency going on.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, right. What's at stake here? We're in a war. We're in a very serious war for our freedom and for the lives of our children. And so this nonsense invading our space is not welcome. So this is Dr. Jason Lisle. I wanted to introduce you to who he is. He was on with I can't remember his name. Hovind's son. I'll remember in a minute. With the Pentagon releasing this is from a year ago, previously classified footage showing objects in the sky defying known laws of physics. Everyone is wondering about aliens and UFOs. So Dr. Jason Lisle, he's a Christian man, for one thing. And he was on here. He was also on with Justin Peters. This is called Creation Today. That's the name of this YouTube channel. You can check this out. Creation Today Ministry. Eric Hovind is his name. He interviewed Dr. Lisle here. And also, let's see. Justin Peters interviewed him recently too. And there it is. So
yes, it is my.
And what they talked about. They talked about the UFO reports. That's a goofy smile. Let me get it off. There we go. They talked about the UFO reports. They talked about all of these things going on. And one thing that Jason Lisle does really, he is I don't know exactly what his title is. Maybe astrophysicist. Yeah, I didn't want to say it without knowing. He's a Christian and an astrophysicist. So these are credentials. All right. And so he's in these videos, he's going to talk to you about how to parse through these kind of things. He's going to tell you what's even possible. What did these pilots really see? What could they have seen? What did they absolutely not see? But with the popularity of all of this going on right now, a lot of enthusiasm among people who tend to get really excited about aliens. A lot of them seem to really want to see a massive alien invasion. David Grusch seems, as you read the articles and you hear all the credentials, he seems like a highly credible, high-level government official who has inside knowledge. But of course, the timing of these allegations is quite obvious with this topic booming as it is. So is it possible that Grusch is trying to ride the wave of public interest? As Stephen Greenstreet reported, these whistleblowers. These are all the same names that have been involved with the UFO story for years. The authors of the original story, Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Keene. These guys are rock stars in the UFO community. Miss Keene, for example, many years ago, she's been involved in this community for decades. She's a UFO activist, right? A researcher, author, but an activist for sure. These same two are the ones who wrote the New York Times front page article in 2017 revealing this Pentagon UFO program. That had to be later. There had to be retractions made to the article because, as you heard Keene say herself, she misled the people so they would accept it. Most of that article is factually erroneous to begin with, factually inaccurate. It's deceptive, and Miss Keene actually went on Showtime to say that she misled the people for this New York Times article. Now, what is the debrief? Just quickly, who are these people? Now, as you heard earlier, the truth is that there were other news outlets that were presented with this story, and they wouldn't touch it. Why is that? Is that because they want to cover up the alien presence? I don't know what the reasons were, but certainly they would pounce on a story that had some kind of evidence for this, right? They would run with it in a heartbeat. So what we know here is that CNN didn't cover it. I'm not sure they did, but if they did or not. But the New York Times did not cover it. The Washington Post chose not to run with it. But Clayton Morris did. Clayton Morris presents himself to you as being, right, we're cutting through the mainstream media nonsense. I don't think so. I don't think so, man. I don't think it's very trustworthy for you to run with such nonsense and waste your viewers' time when not even the New York Times would run with it. Remember the Chinese spy balloon? Remember the subsequent 2 weeks of UFO reports that came after that? Those were all fake as well. But at least they had something to report, right? There was some there. There was something happening. So these mainstream sources, they will cover the story, but they need something to go on. They wouldn't even touch this. But look who did. Look who did. Look who did run with it. However, these two intrepid UFO community starlets, conference regulars, they published this story anyway without any evidence, without vetting any of the sources. They vetted no sources. Why? Because they couldn't. The Debrief is a low-level underground media outlet, as we said earlier. They run lots of UFO stories, lots and lots and lots of UFO stories and innovative technology stories. Of course, the lack of any evidence whatsoever hasn't stopped the fakes, frauds, and grifters from running with it like O.J. Simpson down the 405. Most people come forward with dramatic alien stories, including whistleblowers, claim to have firsthand knowledge. They claim to have some kind of firsthand knowledge about extraterrestrial visitors. So Grusch here, he's not a typical whistleblower. He's had no firsthand information about anything. All his statements were based on secondhand information allegedly relayed to him from other people. He explained his sources. Now here's where we get around to the reasoning part of it. What was David Grusch's method for how he evaluated the evidence that he was given or the stories he was told? He explained his sources. He said, quote, people started to confide in me and approach to me. And I have plenty of former intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me that they were part of a program, unquote. No names, nothing to follow up on, but the Debrief runs with it. It's not a Debrief we're so concerned about. It's Clayton Morris, right? He is the alternative media now. That show is supposed to be, the one that's the bleeding edge in the alternative media. Now, sadly, but severely exposed for a lack of basic critical thinking skills, for showing that they don't really care about their audience. They're wasting, in the middle of a war, they're wasting time. Grusch has seen no documents, seen no evidence. And that was his story. But these world-class journalists, of course, they run with the story. They're not concerned about the lack of evidence. Clayton Morris is he's not concerned about the lack of evidence. In fact, he's so unconcerned he'll have Dr. Michael Salla. He had Dr. Stephen Greer on his show. Now, if there's ever been a bigger farce than Stephen Greer, I don't know. And I'll tell the story again right now. Stephen Greer was my doctor at one time, right? He was.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, he's from Asheville, North Carolina. He's from Virginia, but he lived in Asheville, and he worked as a doctor in the county where we live, and I played football as a youngster, and had a few concussions, whatever, or other things too. I hurt myself a lot at home. I had to have stitches and things.
The Lord was looking out for you.
Yeah, I was. Right. The angels didn't quite keep me from bruising my heel. But anyway, yeah, Dr. Stephen Greer, he was the ER doctor at our local hospital here for many years. So I remember him quite vividly. And I remember back then, one of my best friends back then, his mother worked there in the ER as a nurse, so she knew Dr. Greer well. He said he talked about this stuff all the time. And so eventually, I guess it came to be that this community, this topic, pays better than being a doctor, at least. Right. We are, I'll skip this last part here. I was going to say another thing about the fact that anything that Grusch reported was not top secret. Anything that Stephen Greer reports is not top secret. I happen to, for some reason, I happen to think that Stephen Greer is a true believer. Because he's so new agey. Mm-hmm. I think maybe people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there like that.
I think people need to know who Stephen Greer is. I might be.
Well, like I said, I told this in Matrix Override. You guys have heard this before if you've been with us for a while, but my headmaster in high school, she had a PhD in acoustics, and that was the study of human settlements, and she believed that she would go and fly internationally and meet with scientists around the world once a year, and they would discuss for when the aliens come, right? We've got to improve world relations for when the aliens come.
Yeah.
So she was somebody who had at PhD level and extremely progressive and very, very educated, very, very indoctrinated, right? So, but she believed, she was a true believer, that the aliens, that she was a part of this mission to study human settlements and develop strategies for making sure that humans cooperate and know how to get along for when the aliens come.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people like that who just happen to be true believers. And I think Stephen Greer is one of those true believers. Somebody might disagree with me. I think that's fine if you do. But Stephen Greer, he's actually, there's one thing he did that I thought is really interesting, and I still like to watch it sometimes. It's these interviews he did back years ago for this project where he interviewed all of these people that worked for the Air Force, and something they had experiences of some kind, and some of them clearly were just making it up. Then there were a few guys in there who seemed to have real experiences. But let me play this clip for you, because Stephen Greer was offered $2 billion to keep his mouth shut. Right.
General Albert Stubblebine III, Burt, who had been head of Special Forces and Army Intelligence, he intercepted me after we had this major contact event out in Florida and near Pensacola. And he subsequently, about a month later, personally offered me $2 billion to not pursue what I was doing and become part of his team.
All right, $2 billion.
That is just outrageous.
Now, one of the things that Stephen Greer is known for, and I'll tell you, this is weird stuff. I'm telling you, it's strange, because you can see he's been on with Demi Lovato now. He really was just a country doctor, but when he got himself involved with this over the years, he became
a rock star. He
became the guy. But now let's explain this for you. There are two branches, or more, but basically two branches in the UFO community. There are those that believe Stephen Greer, and there are those that think he's nuts. One of the guys that I really like in the UFO community is Richard Dolan, and of course, he's a true believer when it comes to that. But he's done so much good work on can I say this here? False flags? Can I say? He's done a lot of good work and writing on that really didn't have anything to do with UFOs. He's done a lot of good work with 9/11 and all that. So I would encourage you to check out Richard Dolan's work to a degree. I just wouldn't pay any attention to the UFO stuff that much. He's written some books called UFOs in the National Security State. I think at least 2 volumes, maybe 3. What those books really do is they really do help you understand how national security progressed over the years, from something that was actually about keeping the nation secure to where secrets are hidden, to where corporate interests work within it to enrich themselves and control over the people is
well,
gained from
nothing motivates or gets people in line quite like fear does.
Yeah, I wonder if I can find these.
Fear of this,
these
fear
videos.
of that.
Because they did. Greer has done some of these what they call CE5 events. That's Close Encounters 5. That's where you have interaction. It's where you actually summon the aliens and interact with them. He's had I'm not gonna be able to find the videos. I should have thought about that beforehand too.
Well, you've got all this crazy stuff going on, right? That's pretty easy to debunk, honestly. But then, by the same token, you've got, NASA announcing unidentified aerial phenomena study team members. Like there's like think tanks that are popping up, and the U.S. military creates an anomaly resolution office to investigate UFOs. So the government has these programs in place. They really do.
Yeah, let's see if there's some of these are here. Now, that can be a satellite flare. There used to be a fleet of satellites called iridium satellites, and it's like the structure of these things on the outside. It looked like they were mirrors almost. And this was the original satellites that were used for the back in the day for beepers and early cell phone coverage. And they've just about all their orbits have degraded, and they've all plummeted back to the Earth now, or they've been lost in one way or the other. But for many years, you could plan, I had an app, I could see when there was going to be a satellite flare, because these things would flare up. It'd be early, right after the sun had gone down. And it looked just like that. So a lot of these things are bunkum, but I don't encourage you to go out and look it up. But I've seen the videos where Greer gets together with people on the beach or somewhere, and they all sit and meditate, and they ask for these aliens to show up and manifest to them. And there's been some videos where it doesn't appear that there's any doctoring of the footage going on, but that these things, that there were things appearing to them out over the. Now it could have been, Greer could have known that the Army was going to be dropping flares 5 miles off the coast, and then brought everybody out there to set this up. But it also could be the fact that Stephen Greer is one of the most demonically possessed men on the planet too, because he gets responses with this procedure, this protocol, the CE5 protocol. Anyway, boy, I went down the rabbit hole there for a minute, but anyway, I thought that might be fun if we could find the clip, but I didn't. I just want to say once again, these people who are reporting this story to you, they don't care about evidence. In this thing that they call the most bombshell case about the most significant story in the history of the world, there's no proof of any of the claims. Should people just believe it anyway? Grusch and the media both say that people should believe him based on his credibility, right? He's got lots of people saying he's an honest guy. That doesn't matter. There's no evidence. All the other high-level people who purportedly told him about the galactic spacecraft government salvage team, I guess we just take their word on it. According to these people, a whistleblower can simply boost their credibility by increasing the number of people in their story. It's like, if I don't believe your story about alien visitors, well, he'll just say, what if I told you that people told me they saw aliens? No, I still don't believe it. What if I told you a lot of people informed me that they saw aliens, and those people are really trustworthy? Wait, what? That changes everything. That makes no difference. I guess there must be aliens then, right? The silliest point in the whole matter is this. Grusch didn't say anything about his method of evaluating this crucial, epic, historic, civilization-altering information. Grusch said that when he first found out about it, he thought he was being deceived, like it was a ruse. But he believed it anyway. He never really explained why he believed their story. He didn't explain how he decided that this was worth staking his reputation on. In fact, it's a fact that David Grusch himself has never seen an alien spacecraft. David Grusch has never seen aliens. That we know 100%. But he is 100% convinced that there is a massive government retrieval program of the like that would literally alter life as we know it on Earth, if it were true. Of course, the TV reporter asked David Grusch how many spacecraft of non-human origin that the secret program had. Quite a number, he said. No follow-up question. Here's how you discern the news world. First rule, question all of it. They lie a lot. Not always, but a lot. Second rule, do not trust anyone who does not demonstrate or even seem to possess the basic skills of critical thinking. Our nation is obsessed with the idea of alien visitors. The common narrative from the community is that a conspiracy is what prevents the proof from reaching the public. Now, that is true in some cases. But Grusch claimed exactly that a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeted him, and he said, quote, individuals on these UAP programs approached me in my official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoing, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality, and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia, unquote. So is this paranoia? One of the many things that David Grusch supposedly heard from friends is how the government had recovered dead aliens. And so we have this question again. Why can't aliens land their craft? They traverse what would have to be millions of miles. They would have to be thousands of years advanced beyond our knowledge, but they just can't seem to figure out how to land. None of this story makes any sense. There's only two options. Either Grusch is simply mistaken or he's delusional. Maybe there's another option. Or he and perhaps others are fabricating everything to gain popularity, perhaps to profit from the highly lucrative paranormal and fringe con circuit of conferences and podcasts and the book market. Look, it's quite possible that all these people really did tell David Grusch that the government has an ET junkyard. And it's possible that he believed them. It's possible that he's not lying, or that he doesn't think that what he's doing amounts to lying. Some people simply need to believe in something, because that's our nature. Mankind is essentially homo religiosus. We are all religious in our nature. We want to believe in something. We want to believe in some kind of meta-narrative that involves our purpose, why we're here, who created us, who put us here. And we'll make them up. If we don't like the ones that are available, we'll make them up. That's what history shows us. But what's more likely in this case is that elevated levels of distrust or maybe paranoia and confirmation bias, gullibility, and an inability to accept what one thinks is unknown, and a bold lack of critical thinking skills will cause a person to live in a fantasy world of their own making. That's what a lack of purpose in life can definitely cause when you're separated from your true origin story. Or if someone has a lack of satisfaction with the way the world really is, it's better off to create a better story, right? They feel better off if they create a better story. You know, right after this happened, right after this story broke, within a week, there was a meteor sighting in Las Vegas. And check this out. This is what it looks like when mass hysteria starts. But there's a real meteor sighting, and then watch what happens here.
It's a scene straight out of the X-Files.
That's unreal. I've never seen anything like it. What are they?
A family in Las Vegas insisting something is out there.
You see how the news covers this story? And they start off with an X-Files clip, then they show you these videos of this UFO, this fake UFO floating around here. This is a known fake from years ago. But anyway, check out the actual story.
After allegedly having a close encounter of the third kind.
I swear to God, this is not a joke.
One witness calling 911 after they say an object fell out of the sky and landed in their backyard.
They're like 9 foot, 10 foot tall. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes, they have big eyes.
The mysterious object that fell from the sky, even the officers apparently saw that. The green glow of the alleged UFO is seen on this newly released body camera footage.
I have butterflies, bro. Everyone saw a shooting star, then these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
So when that 911 call came in, less than an hour later, police were ready to believe it.
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
Because I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard?
But after a brief investigation of the yard, officers closed the case as unfounded.
If those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, all right? Deal with it yourself. I ain't dealing with that.
According to former intelligence officer David Grusch, an alien crash landing isn't too far-fetched. Grusch recently turned over documents to Congress claiming the U.S. government has a vast collection of vehicles that have non-human origin.
There you go.
And that's how it starts. Right? This is why you just cannot trust the media, because they don't care about you. They don't care about you. They care about entertainment. They care about entertaining you, but they don't care about you. Right? Just in case, I don't know. Sometimes you don't know who all might be watching, or I don't know everyone in our audience, but people might not know. Maybe you've never seen you've never seen a meteor. There are specific terms for natural objects that enter the Earth's atmosphere. And they're terms that help us understand what these objects are and what's happening to them and why. So a meteor is a small object that burns up in Earth's atmosphere, creating a streak of light, right? That's what they call a shooting star. Bigger ones are called fireballs. It's a bright meteor that produces a luminous trail as it burns up in the atmosphere. We can go a little further. Should we go just one step further to the bolide? Let's go to the bolide. An exceptionally bright fireball. I've seen one of these in my life, and it went across the whole horizon. It took my breath away. And but these will often explode or disintegrate, and they're accompanied obviously by a loud sound. And there are also meteorites. That's a meteoroid that survives the journey. It actually hits the surface of the Earth. When a meteoroid enters Earth's atmosphere, it burns up due to friction. Let's get you let's see which one. Let's just go with this. So you can see some footage here of what it looks like when one falls. And the reason I want you to see this, I actually skipped ahead. The reason I want you to see this is because what happened in Las Vegas was just, it was a meteor, and the news is gaslighting you, right? See, that's what they look like when they fall. That's exactly what was going on in Las Vegas. Not too long ago there was one of these bolides that entered the atmosphere somewhere over Russia. I can't remember where it was exactly, but the explosion of it in the atmosphere was so significant that it caused a shock wave that broke windows in the city. And so this is what it looks like when you have meteors. So here comes one.
No, but it's an alien ship landing.
Yeah, I try to get somewhere outside like 2 and 3 in the morning sometimes when there's meteor showers. It just, around here there's a lot of light pollution, so you don't get to see that many, so it takes a lot of patience to stand there, and we just haven't been that lucky in our area. But do love to watch them whenever we have a chance.
Well, we've seen some good satellites.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've seen the supposed International Space Station crosses our sky every now and then. Something. I don't know if it's a space station or not, but it's something up there. So this is what anyway. This is what meteors look like, and you've got this news agency in news agency. I don't know what they are. Oh, here it is. Here's the largest object to ever impact the Earth.
Supposedly.
Meteoroid. Yeah, this is the Hobah meteorite. This is in Namibia. You can see there on the screen where the impact zone is. This thing was big. I've lost my notes on it, but let's see here. Let me find it right quick. This is, the reason they burn up is because when they come into the atmosphere, they encounter friction. The space is a vacuum. If space is real, let's just assume that space is real, and let's assume all the stories are correct. It's a vacuum, and our Earth has an atmosphere where the air molecules are packed tighter and tighter and tighter as you come down into the atmosphere. And so the objects that enter the atmosphere moving at, 15, 20, maybe 30,000 miles an hour. That might be kilometers. I think it's more around 17 or 20,000 miles per hour that things generally move through space. That's generally how fast the ISS is moving when you see it overhead. It takes about 7 minutes to get from one horizon to the other, and it's generally moving about 17,000 miles an hour. Now that's a little different than Kenneth Arnold seeing this object that was moving 3,000 miles an hour right in front of him. It's a little bit different. You're hundreds of miles away from whatever it is that's orbiting above. Friction occurs when the meteoroid enters the Earth's atmosphere because the atmosphere is composed of gases. And so you see flames, you see streaks, tails, heat energy is released through this reaction. So the size of a meteor affects its brightness, the brightness of its burn. Meteors burn at different colors due to a phenomenon called ionization. So you saw the meteor there in Las Vegas was green. You've seen other ones that are blue. As one of these things enters the atmosphere, the extreme heat causes the atoms and molecules in the meteoroid and surrounding air to become ionized. So that's the glow. When these ionized particles recombine and return to their normal states, they emit light of different wavelengths, resulting in various colors. You could think of this kind of like when you burn copper filings, they burn a certain color. I think they burn green. Other metals burn different colors. But these elements present in the meteoroid and atmospheric composition, they play a role in determining the colors that we see here. So this is the Hobah meteorite. I'm still trying to find my notes. Here it is. The largest meteor ever recorded on Earth, that we're aware of anyway, is the Hobah meteorite, discovered in 1920 in Namibia. This thing is about 3 meters or 9 feet in length and width, and about 1 meter or 3 feet high, mostly composed of iron. Weighs about 60 tons or 120,000 pounds. Look at this. You can see it's just a hunk of metal. Again, this is the largest single intact meteorite ever found on Earth. And this is interesting for the UFO story because of this fact. It's believed to have impacted the Earth's surface around 80,000 years ago, which really means they have no idea when it got here because there's no known method for accurately dating any object that's not carbon-based. Now, you're going to hear naturalists, evolutionists, and advocates of the Big Bang Theory. They'll say they can date non-carbon-based objects like rocks and meteorites using, for example, radiometric dating, right, which is nothing more than a measure of the radioactive decay of certain isotopes within the object. Certain isotopes decay at different rates. So they say that provides a way to estimate the age of the material. All that tells you is when the radiation hit or became present in and around the object. Doesn't tell you anything about when it was created. Judging something's age by the amount of radiation it holds is no way to age anything. It tells you nothing about when the article was created or formed. And they do this a lot with aging. This is why the idea that the Earth is billions of years old, there's no way for us to determine how old the Earth is based on these techniques. It's all theory. It's generally accepted also that the significant portion of the Earth's surface, including the floors of the oceans, remain mostly unexplored. All this to say that over 80% of the world's oceans have not been fully mapped. The point here is there's so much of the surface of the Earth that mankind has never even laid eyes on. Even the land, there's a lot of land no man has ever seen. But of course, we're overpopulated. The point here is we don't know if this is the largest thing that ever hit the Earth or not, because we haven't seen hardly any of the Earth.
You're being sarcastic, by the way, regarding being too populated. We're not overpopulated.
Right. I was being cheeky there.
Cheeky.
But we're overpopulated. Right. We've got areas of the Earth no one has ever seen, but we're overpopulated. Every human being on the Earth could stand shoulder to shoulder in the city of Los Angeles comfortably. I wouldn't want to be there for that. But anyway, they're just playing us. So anyway, I think that's probably about enough of the science lesson here. I just want you to look at these whistleblowers who we know now who we can trust, right? The people who are going to do the work, people who are going to care about what kind of information they give you, right? This story is fake. I know a lot of you are not, that you're not having a hard time agreeing with us on that point, but as we reach out further to new viewers and bring new folks in, we want to make sure that people understand just exactly why they don't have to worry about being fooled or being tricked by this. We've heard people talk about the rapture a lot with this, that there's going to be a fake alien invasion that mimics the rapture. There is no Christian who is aware and familiar with what his Bible says is going to ever fall for any such thing. Right? Whatever your position is on the rapture, or whether you're premillennial like the dispensational like that, or you're postmillennial, things are going to get better and better until it doesn't matter. When the Lord returns, it's not going to be something that's questioned. Like, well, maybe that wasn't. No, it tells us every eye will see at once. And I trust it. Anything you want to say in closing up here?
Maybe just a couple thoughts about how it ties into the United Nations.
Oh yeah, we did want to do it. I think we probably need to come back and do a story
deeper.
Go ahead and tell the folks what your big point there is, because this is important, folks. This is really one of the main points about why we shouldn't be following this stuff too much.
I mean, the UN has their hands all over it. They've got the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, and they've got their favorite words like equity and sustainability all over it. And it just seems like, okay, here's another program that they want to fund heavily, hugely. And what it really appears to be is just another mechanism of surveillance control, where they can make sure that if this person's not authorized to fly, they can't fly. So we want to justify these huge, massive budgets because there might be aliens. And so not only does it violate the fact that it comes against our belief in God, that there is a creator, that there is Jesus Christ. They want to shake that up, that narrative, of course, but also they want to keep their eyes on the skies. They want to authorize who can fly, who cannot fly, and get that surveillance grid up. And there's a lot of evidence for that. So and they have, like, if you just do some Googling and you look it up and you see the feelers and the hands that the UN has on this and how much they're invested in it, there's no denying.
No doubt about it. I was looking for the I was looking for the graphics we had for well, I'll just tell you, there's a show right now over on our True Normal.
Yeah, we talked about SETI and the Artemis Accords.
We covered this to death over there in one show. This was way back when our channel went back
6 months ago.
Yeah, last November when we were shut down, when we had our hands smacked for
because we were talking about how the Georgia Guidestones got knocked down, and then suddenly they've got the prophetic call for climate justice.
True Normal TV is our backup channel. You wanna subscribe there, because if anything happens over here, that's where we go and broadcast from. But we have a show up there right now. Right there it is, from last November. Prepare for alien encounter before it's too late. Now, one of the things we do in this show, which I thought which was a lot of fun, I enjoyed it a lot, was we completely debunked SETI. This is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, which was more or less started by this man Frank Drake, right? And look, these people are wasting money, they're wasting time. I know it seems like, but it's so romantic. They're searching for aliens. Look at this Arecibo image here, where we're sending out these messages to beings. This is a waste of time. And there's a reason for this, right? Everyone has lost their connection to their creator. And so in this video, we go through just point by point, explaining to you why this is nonsense. Here is the Drake equation that is supposed to, this is what everyone points to when they say that this is why aliens must exist, because of this equation. He takes all of these things into account, and there must be life out there because of this equation. SETI has been listening for over 50 years, and they've heard nothing. And I had a lot of fun with this piece too. I believe that the whole UFO community, all of it, is it's like this. We can find aliens, and we can go here and we can go there. So it's just pumping people up. It's false. It's false. It is. What do you call it? Hopium. Right. Who is that? Green? What's his name? Green? Jump ahead. I don't want to get into that topic too much. Something known as a Hidalgo from La Mancha. And his name was Alonso Quijano. And his sidekick, or his squire, as is known in the book, was a simple farmer. A witty, simple farmer. Okay, let's not go too far, Luke. Quixotic. We get that word from Don Quixote de la Mancha, that story. It's an extravagantly chivalrous or romantic, visionary, impracticable, impulsive, and often rashly unpredictable. Right? That's the UFO community, right? There's a lot of people who mean no harm, who just really believe in it. And they're just like Don Quixote. They're tilting at windmills, right? Don Quixote was fighting windmills because when he saw a windmill, he saw a dragon. He saw a dragon that needed to be slayed, right? And that's what we have before us today. That is the modern day Don Quixotes, those David Grusch, and all the others. But and I appreciate Summer bringing that up, because I dropped the ball on that. That's a really important element to this whole movement, and we'll have to definitely come back in another Tracking Dystopia show and explain why it is that that this UFO narrative plays right into the hands of Agenda 21, to the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty, all of that.
Yeah, it's deep in the programming. I mean, every Hollywood film that we all see, they always have the UN in it, right? When right before when the aliens are coming, and then the UN plays a pivotal role somehow, or it's brought up.
They're going to save the day, right? They're there to save the day. All right, folks. We appreciate you being with us tonight. I'm going to play you out with a little clip from Doug Wilson talking about science and what you should believe in, why you should believe, you know, how far should you take your belief in science as ultimate truth and all that. It'll play us out for a couple minutes. And so we just want to thank you for...
Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, thank you for being with us again here tonight. Joining myself and the lovely wife, Summer, for another trip down the rabbit hole here. We hope you understand that what we're trying to say here is this is nonsense, it's a waste of your time, and it's dangerous. I know these topics can be fun, right? They can be a lot of fun to get into, but where we stand today, we've wasted years with fun. Today, where we stand, it's time to get to work. It's time to be serious. We cannot allow people like Clayton Morris at Redacted to just get away with wasting all of your time. If you're going to be a serious journalist, he's going to have to do better than this. And apparently, he is a serious journalist. Apparently, he never left his mainstream media roots or something, because he has wasted everyone's time. News Nation, I don't mean to just pick on him. News Nation, all of the Hill, all of them, they don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't work for you. Right, so here's Doug Wilson with a nice message to play us out. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you here next time.
God bless you guys.
The Lord Jesus speaks of an historical Adam easily, and in the same way that he speaks of other historical characters from the Old Testament. There's no good textual reason for dividing Genesis 1 through 10 from the rest of Genesis, as though the two parts were different kinds of literature. In the same way, the Lord speaks naturally of the first man and woman created at the beginning, Matthew 19:4, and he speaks of them with the same ease that he mentions Moses a few verses later, Matthew 19:8. He does the same with Noah, Matthew 24:37. There are no good reasons why we should not speak in the same way, and impelling reasons for us to insist on speaking that way under his foundational command to follow me. 7. I am quite prepared to make dogmatic affirmations from the text of Scripture, because I believe that is one of the reasons why the text was given to us, so that we might have light in a dark place. And provided we remember what I mentioned earlier, I'm also prepared to receive light from natural revelation and science, and to incorporate it into my understanding of Scripture. Say what an archaeologist tells us about the location of Hezekiah's water supply for Jerusalem. But there is science and there is science. I'm pretty confident that they have figured out the boiling point of water at sea level, and I am grateful for penicillin. But when the authorities tell me what the temperature was at the center of a particular star, right before the supernova happened, or they entrance me with tales of wormholes, or they dazzle my eyes with string theory, my enthusiasm might be a skosh more tentative. They strike me as men who say they want to read all the works of natural revelation, but who just read the first 3 words of a 10-volume series, and who then slam it shut because of the need to start lecturing us creationist cornpones. Time might be one of those complicated things. If God had only created the solar system and there was nothing else out there, we would be able to get by with everything measured by how many trips around the sun we had taken. And the entire cosmos should be thought of the same way. If God placed it here at one fell swoop, it does not give me heartburn to thank him for starlight from a particular star that has no more been to that star than I have. God created the star, the earth, and the entire rope of starlight in between. That should present no more of a problem than God creating both sides of a rock at the same time. But even on the reckoning of the astrophysicist's Big Bangery, time, about which we are speaking, should be considered complicated enough for them to stop lecturing us in simplistic terms, as though their view allows the cosmos to have one timer on the whole thing. Suppose everything that exists all blew out of a volatile little pinprick, and Gabriel has had himself a blast since that time surfing the event horizon, a celestial maverick. We try to tell him that the earth was fashioned 6,000 years ago. Pa, he replies, singing for joy. I was there, and it has only been a minute.
Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on. armoroftruth.net.